You may be familiar with the Farmers and Ranchers College from our previous interviews with Steve Johnson and Brad Lubin. At the workshop series, we also sat down with Austin Duerfeldt, who joined the Nebraska Extension team in January. Austin specializes in farm accounting and negotiation strategies. According to Austin, negotiation is a large part of everyday life. He says that by thinking outside the box, negotiation has the potential to save on operation expenses. We recently spoke with Austin about the importance of knowing how and when to negotiate.
So negotiation is one of those things that not a lot of people necessarily have formal training on. And a lot of people look at it and say, well, I only buy a car once every 5 years. But the fact of the matter is, it's a little bit deeper than that. You go through and you start looking at it and you say, yeah, I buy equipment and I buy cars. I also negotiate my farm cash rent. And then you get to looking at it even further, and at times you're sitting there and you all of a sudden realize, I'm negotiating with my child as whether or not they should be eating their vegetables. I'm negotiating with my spouse and my family as to where I want to eat tonight. If I want to go down 179 or if I want to go on Highway 75. Negotiation is a large part of everyday life, and I think it can benefit a lot of people just knowing a couple of tips and understanding what the process is.
Austin Duerfeldt is currently working on a new extension series of negotiation classes designed to provide helpful tips and tricks that one can use when negotiating.
Just the fact that it's part of everyday life, and since starting an extension as Southeast Educator, I've come to realize cash rent seems to be one of those hang-up points for a lot of people. As I get phone calls, everybody kind of wants to know what cash rent is going for as an average around the county that they're living in. I think they're kind of missing a key point to the whole process, and they're a little bit timid because they don't want to upset the other side. But understanding what the range that we're negotiating in and kind of what everybody's looking for, there's also the key is just the fact that a lot of times everybody gets hung up with the cash portion of it. How much do you want for me to cash rent this ground? But you're leaving a lot on the table with some other side notes, if you will, of things that could be negotiated with. One of the ones that I know I've come across before is somebody realized that they can't quite get the cash rent that the landowner wanted, but then they realized that they were leaving for Florida every winter. And so now all of a sudden there's this negotiation factor of, I can care for and watch after your house when you're down in Florida and you won't have to worry about that. And it's those non-monetary items of negotiation that some people are leaving on the table.
A method Austin recommends producers use while negotiating is the Ackerman bargaining method.
When you start talking about car purchases and big equipment, you start to run into something that's a little bit more hard-nosed than some of the other situations you look at. I put out an article on Crop Watch that talks about the Ackerman bargaining method. It's a lot more of figuring out what your target price is and trying to work your way. And then just as I was talking about non-monetary features, a lot of times what you'll run into is these dealerships, they'll come up with extended warranties or something that's cheap for them to offer but offers value to you, and you have to just understand kind of what that value is.
From applying the Ackerman bargaining method to learning how to communicate with all types of negotiators, Austin's goal is to make sure all are comfortable when negotiating.
Later this spring, we're hoping to hammer out the finalized details, and maybe late summer go ahead and start doing some programs and some seminars and try and make them a little bit more interactive, where you'd be given a scenario and you'd actually run through a negotiation process with somebody else. Crop Watch is a great resource. I'm trying to do Gold Star Negotiation. It's going to be a series. More places in terms of if you're wanting to find out more about negotiation. Harvard Law School actually has a great blog and series that you can subscribe to and find out some tips and tricks that, these are things that are being offered in courses for CEOs and high-powered companies, and they do a great job of trying to provide that resource and make it available for everybody.